while cable news is currently obsessing over Trump-Russia and the Mueller indictments, there's some really significant stories that are getting basically zero attention. And one of them is that the US government just expanded its spy apparatus. So according to Dustin Voles of Business Insider, in conjunction with Reuters, he reports the US government has broadened an interpretation of which citizens can be subject to physical or digital surveillance to include homegrown violent extremists, according to official documents seen by Reuters. The change last year to a Department of Defense manual on procedures governing its intelligence activities was made possible by a decades-old presidential executive order bypassing congressional and court review. The new manual, released in August of 2016, now permits the collection of information about Americans for counterintelligence purposes when no specific connection to foreign terrorists has been established, according to training slides created last year by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. The slides list the shooting attacks in San Bernardino, California in December 2015 and Orlando, Florida in June 2016 as examples that would fall under the homegrown violent extremist category. Executive Order 12333, signed by former President Ronald Reagan in 1981 and later modified by former President George W. Bush, establishes how U.S. intelligence agencies, such as the CIA, are allowed to pursue foreign intelligence investigations. The order also allows surveillance of U.S. citizens in certain cases, including for activities defined as counterintelligence. So, in other words, goodbye Fourth Amendment, because the U.S. government will undoubtedly be using this to spy on you, because we already learned that through the Snowden leaks, the NSA was spying on just average Americans. They were spying on World of Warcraft players. They were spying on us every way they possibly could. They were collecting metadata from our phone calls. And all this does is broaden the spy apparatus. But this executive order is just one of many ways our elected officials have chipped away at the Fourth Amendment. Because the Patriot Act, as I mentioned, which was passed, mind you, 45 days after 9/11, made it much easier for the government to spy on ordinary citizens without warrants. So we have executive orders that make it easier for the government to spy on us because, look, they've already violated that trust. We know that they're not just going to use this to spy on homegrown terrorists, but they're also going to use this to just spy on ordinary Americans. So it's executive orders that expand the spy apparatus, but it's also legislation like the Patriot Act that do the same thing. Now, thankfully, there is a bipartisan effort being spearheaded by Ron Wyden and Rand Paul to rein in the government's surveillance powers. So according to Reuters, them, along with 12 other senators, introduced legislation that would require the NSA to obtain a warrant for queries on data on Americans under an internet surveillance program. The surveillance program, classified details of which were exposed in 2013 by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden, also incidentally scoops up communications of Americans, including if they communicate with a foreign target living overseas. Those communications can then be subject to searches without a warrant, including by the FBI. The USA Rights Act, authored by Wyden and Paul, would end that practice. So that would absolutely be a huge step in the right direction, but we have to understand that the Fourth Amendment is being attacked from different angles. Like I said, legislatively and through the executive branch as well. But here's what I know. If we are going to have a constitution, then we actually need to follow the Constitution. The government is not benevolent when it comes to spying. They're broadening their own powers to continue warrantless spying on American citizens, which is illegal and unconstitutional. So at the end of the day, I don't have much to say about this other than the fact that we have to be aware of what's happening. Unfortunately, Edward Snowden, when he released all of the files on NSA spying and whatnot, he basically said that he wanted the American people to make their own decision, and by and large, it seems like they don't care. A lot of them are ambivalent and don't really care about their own privacy, but this is something that we can't become complacent about, because the Constitution is important. I think that unreasonable searches and seizures and protections from that, it's fundamental to our democracy. So the fact that our elected officials continue to brazenly violate that is not acceptable. So we have to at least be aware of it, and we need to fight them, because that's not acceptable.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.